On today's Transport Evolved, Elon Musk's D, Nissan LEAF charge cable security, and how driving faster could be better for battery life. These stories and more coming up next on Transport Evolved. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode 213 of Transport Evolved, recorded on Sunday, October the 5th, 2014. My name is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield, and I'm your usual host into the world of alternative fuels and future transport. And yes, you'll notice I'm using a different microphone today because last week's lav mic, I was trying to be all clever and professional. Lav mic noises were just too much, so I've broken out the old trusty microphone. Old school radio style, and the sound's much better, so I think you'll forgive the fact that there is a microphone in front of my face. I've got two great guests joining me today. They've both been on the show before. First up, I believe still in on the East Coast, Mr. Seth Weintraub from 9 to 5 Mac and also from electrek.co. How are you, Seth?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. You're a Model S owner. Amongst other things, also very, very busy day job, 9 to 5 Mac, but you cover electric vehicles at Electrek, and you've been busy. This has been a busy summer for you, hasn't it? Apple announcement and Apple Watches and SDKs and Tesla updates, etc., etc., etc. We'll come back and find out more about that in a minute, but I want to welcome the second guest to our show today, Plug-in America's science officer. Also an Apple user, as he told us in the pre-show chat, and also generally all-round guy. He's the battery guru. I think he's becoming known as a battery guru for electric cars around the world. Please welcome back to the show, Mr. Tom Saxton.
I'm great, Nikki. Thanks.
Thanks for coming on, guys. I hope you like the new setup. And before we get going, I know a couple of people have commented about the white space behind me not being quite right. The secret here is that this is a virtual set. This is not really here. And the people who make the program I use haven't given me the special sauce to change that yet. I'm working on it. So everyone will just have to be patient for now. But you guys have been really busy over the last couple of months. And Seth, it's been nearly a year since you were last on the show. So why don't you tell us, Seth, about what you've been up to, and also you've updated your Model S software update recently, haven't you?
Yeah, the 6.0 update came out I think about 2 weeks ago, and the kind of headline feature of that is the ability to start the car without the key fob. Which I actually had a need for the other day because I couldn't find my keys, and I tried using it, and in the line of fire, it actually it didn't work. You hit the button, it says you have 2 minutes to start your car, and I jumped in the car, I tried to start it, didn't work. So I would caution people not to rely on that.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
No, that's interesting because I've seen this software. I've seen some videos on YouTube of this software being used, and I've seen a lot of Tesla fans going, "Yay, this is brilliant!" This is the first person. You're the first person I've heard of who's had difficulties with it. But I'm guessing this works. How does this work? Because obviously the Tesla Model S can connect to your iPhone using Bluetooth, but it's also got a Wi-Fi network in the car, and it's also obviously the Tesla app generally connects over the internet, doesn't it? So it's a really complicated setup.
Yeah, it goes through the internet. I mean, I'm not sure if the app actually even connects through Bluetooth. Obviously you connect to music and media through through Bluetooth, but the app actually it goes through Wi-Fi or the Cell Connect network, and it connects to the car through the car's cell or Wi-Fi. So that's why not everything's always instant. Sometimes you pop up the app and a couple seconds for everything to kind of fall into place. So, maybe that was an issue. My car was in the garage, which has Wi-Fi. So maybe Tesla only lets you do that over cell connection. I don't know, and I was going to call Tesla about it, but it was just such a rush thing at the time that I ended up finding the keys, and now I forgot about it.
And we were talking about the show. Sorry, Seth. We were talking before the show about how this is a software update. It's not like it's not like Apple with the famed, was it 8.0.1, where they rolled out a new update for the new iPhone 6 and the 6 Plus, and it completely bricked phones. And then, like 24 hours later, Apple rolled out another one. If your phone goes wrong, it's inconvenient, but it's not necessarily bad. But I mean, if your car goes wrong, that's a lot harder, isn't it, to make better?
Yeah, I think Tesla is a lot more tentative about pushing out updates, and they're only going to do that when they're pretty convinced that nothing's going to break. With the Apple update, just because I have some expertise there, I think, shockingly, I don't think the team that QAs the releases yet had the iPhone 6s and 6 Plus, so they were actually not the update worked fine on the 5s and the 5Ss and the 5Cs and all the other iPhones. So it's pretty obvious to me that the team didn't have the right testing equipment. So I don't think that's going to happen with Tesla. And obviously anything can happen, but it's in Tesla's much best interest not to push out a bad update. I think that would.
It's interesting you say that, because I used to work at Mac Formats in the UK. Oh goodness, back in 10 years ago, 2003, 2004. And it was just when the new G5 Power Mac was coming out. And sort of everybody on the journalistic team, they got review machines. They would get review machines. They'd come in, they'd have a couple of weeks with them, and then they'd go out again. I was the person responsible for making the CDs to go in the magazines, the cover magazines with CDs, and I had to beg, and make this. I think it was a 10-page appeal back to the management as to why I needed one of the latest computers, because I argued that some of our readers would have these, and I needed to make sure that it worked on the latest operating system on the latest machine. And you know what? It worked. So maybe Apple needs to have that same attitude.
Yeah.
Tom, you've been busy at Plug-in America. You've had National Plug-in Day, or National Drive Electric Week. That's gone really well, hasn't it?
Yeah, we had a great year this year. We increased the number of events by 50% and doubled the registered attendees, and about almost tripled the number of people that the city captains reported showed up. So yeah, again, another year of gigantic growth.
And I know that California had a really, really active day. How were things sort of further north? Because you're in Washington State, aren't you?
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. We had 3 events in Washington State, and the one here in the Seattle area went off very well. We got wonderful weather, which is not always guaranteed in the 3rd weekend of September. So yeah, it was a big success.
Good. I'm glad you had a good time. And I think lots of people driving electric for the very first time, or driving plug-in for the very first time. Obviously, Transport Evolved does cover other fuels, other future technology. But, let's face it, I'm a plug-in driver. We're all plug-in drivers. We're all here because we like the technology. We want to support it and see it move forward. But it's so great when events like this come out and people get to drive the cars and they get to have a good time. We talked about it quite a lot last week on the show, but obviously the industry does need advocates helping and moving, just getting people bums in seats. And that brings us, unfortunately, I really debated about when to put this in the show. And I thought about putting it at the end, and then I thought, I can't put it at the end. I'm going to put it at the head of the show. Unfortunately, I've got some sad news to break. I suspect some of you will have already heard. A gentleman by the name of William Korthof. He was Doug Korthof's son. It was his birthday last week. I'm friends with him on Facebook and saw his birthday come up, and one of the sort of the many people wishing him happy returns of the day. And the next day, unfortunately, he was involved in a motorcycle accident in California. I believe he was a passenger, based on the the reports that I've been given, and unfortunately was killed instantly. Very, very, very important advocate in the electric car world. Very, very important in solar electricity too, wasn't he, Tom?
Yeah, he made a huge contribution, especially for such a young person. I mean, he got involved when he was in the back when they were saving the cars from being crushed in California.
Well, he was 30, just turned 35, and he just had his 35th birthday.
Yeah. I actually hadn't met him in person, and I didn't realize how young he was. I mean, he spoke with such great, insight and knowledge on a multiple mailing on. So he was, a huge contributor to the community, and it's a tragic loss. He obviously had many more years in front of him to contribute to improving the planet. I'm very sad to see him gone.
Yeah, and I've reached out to some people who knew him and said, look, would you be willing to write a piece for our site, giving him a good eulogy, and hopefully someone will step up and do that. We don't know if and when memorials will take place yet because of the nature of the accident. Some other things have to happen first. Our thoughts are with obviously his family and friends and those who knew him well. Very, very tragic loss in the electric vehicle world, specifically in California. Okay, moving on. And I hate it when we have to have sad news and then we have to move on, and it makes me feel like one of these newscasters who kind of turns to the camera, does something very sad, and then smiles and says something else. And I don't feel like smiling. But maybe this story will make me smile. I'm sure William would appreciate this one. Mr. Elon Musk. He is a bit like the late Steve Jobs, isn't he, Seth? He can say anything and the world takes notice.
Absolutely. On a lot of different levels, he's similar to Steve Jobs. I just watched a design video where a couple of the top designers from Tesla were talking about Musk, and you could kind of replace Steve Jobs in there with the way he behaved. A product person that is involved in as a CEO. Most CEOs aren't involved in the product, but Musk and Jobs were both very similar in that regard.
They were, and so this week we had Elon Musk likes to break things on Twitter, and I think he's one of those late night guys. He gets home in the evening, and I joked in the week. I said, for God's sake, Elon Musk must hate me, because he always leaks information about Tesla late at night when I'm just about to go to sleep, or while I'm asleep. I think I got a message about 2:30 in the morning from one of my friends going, "Oh my goodness, Elon Musk's been tweeting about showing the D," which, if you live on the internet, you will know the internet meme. I'm not going to go there. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up the internet meme, show him the D, or show her the D, sorry. Elon Musk tweeted an image of a Tesla Model S in a garage with the garage heart with a D written on top. And it was clearly a Tesla Model S because I checked the shape of the headlights. That's how I knew that it was a Tesla Model S. And he says he's going to unveil the D and something else on the 9th. What do we think it is? Now, Seth, there are some hints, aren't there? There's some photos that have leaked this week.
Yeah, and my initial thought was that there's been some recent also leaks of there's a camera behind the rearview mirror and there's lane assist, and it's all called driver assist. So initially my first reaction was that's driver assist, but more recently a picture of a P85D was released, and I think it was that some internet sleuths found out that it was in the California Central Desert Mojave area or something, which is a good testing ground for Tesla because they're also in California.
Now,
but,
yeah.
Go ahead.
So sorry, you were going to say. So it's either going to be the driver assist or the all-wheel drive dual motor.
Well,
the D for dual motor.
I have some friends who know what it is, and they won't tell me what it is. So it's very frustrating. But they did tell me that it was not driver assist.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure it's not that. I've also heard from those, actually, an official Tesla person that the Model 3 isn't going to be talked about during the events.
Right, and this is a story that you actually wrote over on your blog this week, because there was an investor, wasn't there? An analyst who went, "Oh, it's going to be the Model 3," and then suddenly this massive internet rumor started. "Oh, it's going to be the Model 3, and it's going to be this, and it's going to be this, and it's going to be that," and you actually confirmed no.
Yeah, and it's funny, going back to Apple again. This guy's name is Trip Chowderly. I don't know if I'm spelling it right, or saying it right, but he was like, he's always been really bad at Apple stuff too. Like, he said Steve Ballmer was going to talk at a WWDC thing, and like all this stuff is really off the wall. So like these car guys, they don't really know this guy. Is kind of a clown, and and taking him at his word when he rarely, if ever, has anything correct to say. So, I pinged a couple of people at Tesla, and one of them told me that they're not going to unveil the E or talk about the 3.
And we also had some other weird stuff coming out where I had a couple of people going, "Oh, there must be another car coming out called the D, the Tesla D. Oh, it's a fourth car or whatever." And look, okay, we just need to put for a second our sensible hats on, not our dream world hats. Right. Tesla has a very finite amount of money right now. It's still rolling. It hasn't produced the X yet. The X is not due to enter production until next spring. And that's going to cost Tesla a lot of money. If you look at the financials for the last couple of years, Tesla spent inordinate amounts of money making the Model S homologated in all these different countries, all these different markets. And it's taken Tesla, 3 years to roll the Model S out so far? And it's still not available everywhere. So it's got to replicate that with the X. It's also got to pay and build for the Gigafactory, despite was it 1.5 billion in tax breaks from the state of Nevada, plus the 1 or 2 billion estimated from Panasonic. No one knows for sure quite how much Panasonic's giving. That still leaves a $3 to $4 billion hole that Tesla has to fill somehow. That combined with everything else, there's no way that Tesla's going to bring another car out for at least 3 years. I just, it's got enough on its plate with the E, etc., or the 3. And I think you're right. I think dual motor is technically the most sensible option, because it's based on the same the Model X and the Model S. They're the same chassis, don't they?
Right. And there's a couple of things. There's been some leaked. I don't even know if they're leaked. I think they might be just public. At the Paris Auto Show, there was supposed to be a all-wheel drive version of the Model S shown, and I don't think it was. And then in a couple other documents and spec sheets, there's been all-wheel drive Model S. I think there's a PowerPoint deck as well that was put online. So we know that's coming. So from a logic standpoint, we know that the Model X is coming, but like to get to the Model X, you could put the same top, the cover, basically the car cover on top of the Model X bottom, and you'd have a all-wheel drive car. It's also winter's coming up pretty soon, so a lot of people want to get the 4-wheel drive things going. So a lot of things point to all-wheel drive or dual motor, as Tesla actually calls it on their site when referring to the Model X.
Now I need somebody. You've just put this thing in my head now, Seth. Someone needs to create this meme and put it up online. Eddard Stark driving a Model S dual motor with the word "winter is coming" underneath. I just think that would be brilliant. Yes, I know he's dead. Spoiler, but still, I think it would be cool. Talking though, I mean, it's really hard with Tesla, isn't it? Because Tesla is overpriced. It's got overpriced stock. Rumors fly just crazy about Tesla. It's sometimes very difficult to sort the wheat from the chaff, isn't it, when it comes to rumors? Tom, I don't know how you feel about this. I mean, I know you're not a rumor guy. I know you kind of just wait until the car's there, and then once you've got something tangible, that's when it's interesting for you. But what do you think about this?
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of rumors, and it seems like Musk says a lot of things that are I don't know, let's say forward thinking that don't come attached with a price or a time frame, and that makes people think that something that might happen in the future is happening today. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, I hear lots of crazy things when people ask me questions about Tesla.
We should probably give credit to the original. There was a user on the Tesla Motors Club. That's where that photo came from. Picture of a Tesla P85 with a D behind it. It didn't have a license plate. That was the interesting thing. Didn't have a license plate, and that shot was just brilliantly framed and well taken, which makes me wonder if it was an internal leak. I
Well,
just have that in my head. It felt too perfect. The day after, or the same day, I think it was, this photo surfaces. What do you think, Seth? Do you agree with me?
These things happen. Like I don't know about Tesla at this point because they're kind of new. I'm kind of new on the scene, I guess, or they're kind of new on the scene. But I know in the Apple world and the Google world, those sometimes leaks aren't really leaks.
Yeah.
They're put out there, and it's also very convenient that a couple things. The D is the same font and has the same look as the one from the invite, and also that the person who's taking the picture could have also taken the front wheel drive, like put a camera underneath the wheels, and you would have had the 4-wheel drive. So that it could have been a way to control the leaks, so that people didn't think the Model 3 was coming, or people. It's a way to set expectations, I guess.
And it's the same with obviously with the Apple iPhone. I mean, we saw the photos of the cases months before it happened. And actually, this is something that I'm quite passionate about. I've become fed up of anti-climaxes. There have been very few technological and car releases recently where I haven't gone, yay, I'm really excited about this. I genuinely don't know. And you get the press release on embargo 24 hours before it's released and you go, wow. And you're blown away. I genuinely didn't know this. These days, you don't get that anymore. I mean, and that was only three or 4 years ago. You used to get stuff on embargo and it used to really excite you. These days, it's kind of like, yeah, we know what's going to happen. It's one of the reasons why I don't go to motor shows anymore, because it's kind of, you know what you're going to have before it happens. And that's the same in the tech world, isn't it, Seth?
Yeah, I mean, it's two parallel things. I mean, you have to test and you have to build millions of iPhones. So everybody in China that builds them, who makes $1 a day or whatever, and gets an offer of a couple $1,000s, is going to give a shell or an iPhone case. So Apple has no way to control anything that it's building right now, and that kind of goes to the cars. Like, you can't test a car in a building anymore. You have, or I don't know if you could ever do that, but you have to take it out to the track, and Motor Trend and all the traditional car companies have always had leaks of things that they've seen on the track, and they're disguised as other things, but you can kind of get a sense of what it is. So in both cases, they're both pretty good. It's very hard to keep stuff from hitting public. Although, we're a few days away and we don't really know what the D is. Although one of my friends has told me that he's going to tell me before it's going to happen. So maybe we'll know exactly what it is.
So we'll get the exclusive. It's always nice to know just before, because then you can actually have the copy written up and you can press as the thing is happening. All right, staying with Tesla just for a second, and then we're going to have a break. We did talk about lane departure warning and also cruise control technology that sees the sign up ahead and tells you what the sign is. It knows the limit and then it warns you if you go over it. This is technology that's not new. Tesla is introducing it and has silently introduced it. It's not just, Tesla hadn't an announcement, but Tesla's a small volume car maker, and to date, Tesla's way of doing things is to just gradually add bits to the cars. So in sort of 5-10 years time, it's going to be really interesting for classic car collectors, because they're going to be buying these cars secondhand and going, oh, well, they'll be able to figure out exactly when the car was built by the features it had. And I haven't seen that kind of behavior with cars since the 1980s. I mean, back then it was quite common, if you changed the engine or you changed a piece of equipment, that you'd see this gradual, changing even to the bolts, when they move from one system of bolts diameters to another, the switch, for example, from over to metric, you'd see imperial, metric and imperial, and then eventually it would go to metric, and you'd have cars with bits of one generation and bits of another generation, or bits of the same generation but just different points in the production cycle. And Tesla's added the quiet inclusion, lane departure warning, and speed warning system. You said it might hint in the future towards self-driving, or piloted driving, as Musk like to call it, autopilot driving. I think you're right. I think it's disappointing that Tesla hasn't made a bigger thing about this, because it's one of the biggest criticisms I've had of the Model S and the Tesla in general, is that Tesla makes fantastic cars, but then it doesn't include the kind of technology that you can buy in pretty much every sort of mid-range up car. I mean, I was driving the Volkswagen e-Golf a couple of months ago. It had both those in. It's available on everyday cars now, not just premium cars. Why are they so late to the party?
So I don't know if they're, I guess they're late to the party on some things. I have a plug-in Prius, and it has the cruise control where it kind of slows down if it's catching up to a car in front of it. It's the radar thing. And that's a Prius, so that's not like even a high-end kind of car. I think they've had other priorities. Like you were talking about how there's all these small upgrades. There's a lot. I think they've taken like the weight of the Model S since it first came out. So, it now performs. And as an early adopter, I'm kind of a little jealous about like, okay, well, I have a heavier car. So, it's interesting where they've chosen the priorities. Although I have to say, they have made a lot of fuss about the autonomous driving, and I think they're going to be making a lot of moves in that area very soon. Just, I don't know, this week, Musk told CNN, which again to the point where Musk kind of talks a lot of early stuff that may not actually happen on time. He told CNN that by 2015, which is next year, there will be 90% of your driving could be autonomous, which, that's kind of nuts. But, highways and surface streets that are pretty regular can be done autonomously. And, it's obviously on the books and being tested right now, if he can say that next year it's going to be rolling out. So I think the fact that Tesla hasn't gotten there yet doesn't mean that they're not pushing that really hard.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Tom, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just, an automaker that sells millions of cars across models can afford to put a development team on, some cool little feature that they start in their high end, and then they move it down to their mid-range and even low-end cars. And obviously an automaker that only has one model with another model on the way can't really afford to have, that many engineering teams building all these cool technology features.
That's a really valid comment to make. It reminds us that Tesla is a low volume automaker at the moment. Despite how well it's doing, it is still a low volume automaker, and it's got a long way to go before it reaches the point where it's, where everybody else is. Let's have a little bit of an ad break right now, and I just want to thank, by the way, all the people who have been subscribing to us on our YouTube channel. We reached a bit of a milestone this week, so I'm very happy about that. But if you want to tell everybody about Transport Evolved and you want to support us, there are two ways you can do that. The first one is you can make a financial contribution to Transport Evolved. If you go to our main website, www.transportevolved.com, you can take a monthly subscription out using PayPal. So it's nice and safe, and you can choose to subscribe by paying either £5 a month. Sorry. You can do £10 a month, you can do £20 a month, or you can do £40 a month, and those levels are called level 1, level 2, CHAdeMO, I think we call that quick charge, and then supercharging. And yes, we added the supercharging because someone said to us, we did have someone contact us, go, I want to give you £40 a month. Can you please add that option? And we thought no one ever is ever going to want to pay that much, but there are some people who do donate that much. And to do that, you go to our website, www.transportevolved.com, and on the right-hand rail, if I can get my iPad to stop misbehaving, you'll see down there on the right hand side there is a donate button that you can click on there and that will make a monthly donation. You can choose when that donation comes out. The other way of doing it is to send us a Bitcoin payment. Some people are now sending us Bitcoin payments as and when they feel like it, which is lovely. Thank you to the people who are doing that, and there is a link beneath the subscribe button where you can send a PayPal donation. But the third way, the other kind of way that you can support us, is by telling people about and just, tell, if you're talking to someone about your car or about future car technology, say, well, hey, go to transportevolved.com, check out the website, check out the YouTube channel, check out the podcasts. Don't forget, we've got TEN, which is our weekly news roundup every Friday, 10 minutes in length. We tell you the most important news stories of the week, and then we discuss them on a Sunday over in the Transport Evolved show, which is what we're doing right now. Joining me today, we've got the wonderful Seth Weintraub and also Tom Saxton, and we are talking now about the Paris Motor Show. Now, the Paris Motor Show is on right now. We had the press days earlier this week. The Paris Motor Show is on for next week. Interesting cars, interesting collection of cars. I got the impression this year that the focus was not on plug-in vehicles, and maybe not even on future fuel technology. There was a very kind of a poor representation of plug-in vehicles and also of hydrogen, for example. Now, we did have some important announcements that I am going to mention. The Volkswagen GTE, the Passat GTE, so that's kind of slightly larger than the Golf. Both a sedan and also a station wagon variant will be available with the same drivetrain as in the Golf GTE. And the Golf GTE, I've driven that a couple of weeks ago in Switzerland, and let me tell you, that is a very, very impressive car. It blows something like the plug-in Prius out of the water. It blows, I think, in a lot of ways, the Chevrolet Volt out of the water. And it is not an range extended electric car. It is a plug-in hybrid. It does about 30 miles in all electric range according to the NED cycle, nearer to 25 miles, I think, in real world. And then it's got a very, very decent gasoline engine that kicks in and gives you sort of the rest of the way if you need it. But the thing that is impressing me about the Volkswagen Passat GTE is it's available as a station wagon, and I've got kids and dogs, so I think that's going to be very interesting. We don't know yet if it's going to be available in the US, but I think it would have a market. What do you think, Tom? Plug-in hybrid station wagon.
Oh, I'd love to see more and more models of electric vehicles. I'm sure every time we stretch into a new form factor, we can appeal to another segment of the car buying public. So I love that. And
I think it's a challenge, isn't it? Because we think of plug-in vehicles have got this kind of reputation as being these little small dinky city cars. Even now we've got the Model S, which is, a decent sized vehicle. People still think, don't they, Seth, of EVs being small and pokey and round town?
I think, well, depends on who you ask. I think Tesla's doing a lot, and also Nissan and Ford and now BMW. With changing that. I mean, obviously, if I talk to my parents, they're talking golf carts and stuff, but people in my circles seem to kind of
they're getting it slowly.
They're getting it, yeah.
Well, there are some other interesting cars. I mean, I suppose the biggest disappointment for me about this particular year's Paris Motor Show is that Peugeot, for example, they demonstrated 2 plug-in hybrid concept cars. Don't have any plans to make either of them. And then it demonstrated something called the hybrid air concept, which this year it was in a 208. Again, this is all about hitting targets in Europe, hitting that 141 miles per gallon target for 2025. And all the automakers are trying to do it in as cheap a way as possible. Targets are really tough, aren't they, Tom, to meet? Because you have to have targets for emissions, you have to have targets for fuel economy, but automakers are choosing to do what is cheapest and easiest for them. They're not willing to stick their heads above the parapet, especially Europeans, and go towards plug-in or other alternative fuels.
The problem is with those targets that people who put them in place need to be very thoughtful about what they want and to ensure that the rules get them there. I mean, for example, with the California market, there's great incentives for ZEV credits for a vehicle that gets 100 miles in the city. So we see a whole ton of cars that get about the Leaf's range. But then you have to go all the way up to, 300 miles to get more credits. So that's why there's this, gigantic gap between the Leaf and the Model S. And I think that plays a big role. And I mean, you can tell that Tesla really wants you to buy the P85 or buy the 85 kilowatt, not the 60 kilowatt. And I think it's driven by that. So, I wish CARB would put an intermediate level there so that we could see some 150 mile cars, which I think would be awesome. But anytime you're designing these things, people are going to find, like you said, the cheapest way to meet the letter of the law, and that may not be what the regulators really want.
And it's interesting too, because we're seeing very, very from Europe, very, very definite this compliance car attitude, which we've seen in the US for years. We're also, though, as we were talking about last week on the show with Chelsea Saxton and Robert Llewellyn, electric vehicles, plug-in vehicles are still very much a upper middle class thing, and they're just too expensive for most people to be able to afford, and the people who really need them are the people who very often can't afford them. So we've got this kind of challenge, I suppose, and I guess if automakers are using things like hybrid air technology and ultra low emission vehicles that are gasoline based to help more people reduce their carbon footprint, that's a great thing. The thing that I suppose my favourite vehicle from the Paris Motor Show, and I got really criticised for this. I had someone really ranted at me on YouTube. The Volkswagen XL Sport, which is the XL1, which was a plug-in hybrid. They've taken out the plug-in hybrid drivetrain and put in a Ducati motorcycle engine. It has a top speed. It's less than 200 horsepower for this thing. Very, very low coefficient of drag, and it will do 168 miles an hour top speed. They don't give, I mean, it's a concept car that they're going to turn into a limited production car, 200 being made, like the XL1. I can't wait to drive it. A lot of people were saying, well, why are you championing a regular gasoline vehicle? And the answer is, normally cars that do 168 miles an hour have massive monster V8 engines in, like 5, 6, 7, 8 litre V8 engines in. They get maybe 2 or 3 miles to the gallon. And this is a car that Volkswagen has come up with and gone, look, okay, this is using conventional technology, but it's very, very aerodynamic. And I would like to see more of those aerodynamic cars come into being. And it just reminds me how sad I was that the Aptera never made it into production. There we are. Moving on. Now, this is one, Tom, that you said you're very interested in at the beginning of the show. A joint project between the Nanyang Technological University and the German Aerospace Centre has developed a new type of electric car motor that can function both as an air compressor for the air conditioning system, but also as a traction motor. They're claiming it's more efficient because of synergies, in other words, more than the sum of its parts between the two systems. I'm presuming there is some kind of mechanical linkage between the air compressor side and the motor itself, which means it uses less energy to do both functions. Also, they're talking about being able to use regenerative braking to run the air compressor, which again I assume is a mechanical linkage, and it's converting mechanical energy to mechanical energy is much mechanical energy into thermal energy is much more efficient than going mechanical electrical thermal. Am I right, Tom? He's stopped. I've lost you, Tom. Seth, can you jump in there?
Sure. So, air compressor is a motor. It's an electric motor. So, one side is spinning the wheels, and maybe you put another gear on that, and that's doing the compression. It doesn't seem. I mean, from a high level standpoint, I haven't read much about this, but I did read about it. But it doesn't seem like something that it's going to pretty much change how we do things. Also, I use an air conditioner in New York, maybe like 30 days a year. So that part to me isn't like super appealing. As far as the um, you said the air compression, there's one other thing that it was doing.
Yes. Yes.
What was the other?
Sorry, it was so it was doing air compression, but it was also a motor for driving the vehicle along.
Right.
So it does both.
I mean, right. The motor is driving. I mean, there's an electric motor and an air compressor. So I'm assuming that they just link up the mechanical force of the
Yeah.
motor
Yeah.
to the air conditioning.
Tom,
So
you're
yeah.
so Tom, you're back. Can you hear me?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we suffered the same problem as we did last week. For those of you who were watching last week, Robert Llewellyn suddenly became a mime artist about halfway through the show, and we couldn't figure out what it was. We donated an old MacBook, and it gets about 50 minutes into a call, and then it goes, "No, I'm not going to send you any audio anymore." So that's why I asked Seth to take over, because I had to jump off, go to your machine, disconnect you, and then reconnect you, and it's all fine again. So thank you, Seth. You had
Right.
saved my bacon there. So Tom, what were you going to say about it?
Oh, just, I think their claims are a little overstated. I think it does make sense. Sounds promising to get rid of another electric motor in the car and just bleed energy out of the electric motor and regenerative braking when you get it. So, sounds cool.
The
proof's in the
disappointing,
pudding.
the disappointing thing there, wasn't it, guys, was the fact that they went, "Oh, if you don't have an air compressor, you can have bigger battery packs." Now, Seth, you just said you're in New York, you don't really need to use AC all that much, and bigger battery packs.
I don't know how big the compressor engine is.
It's
I
not
think
very big. I mean, it's like
you
what?
could probably put a couple lantern batteries in
Yeah,
your car
yeah.
now.
It's like the size of a watermelon, isn't it, Tom? AC compressor.
Yeah, I'd say it's smaller than a 1-gallon can.
Yes. All
I've seen
right.
the one that's in the Roadster. It's not gigantic.
All right, 2015 Zero Motorcycles had their range updated this week. Great new features. I don't know if either of you ride bikes, but it's the kind of things that bikers, I think, will be interested in. Improved suspension. They're now running on Pirelli tyres, which are very, very sure-footed. Improved suspension, improved seat. And Zero really has struggled over the years to get a seat that's really comfortable for long distance riding, and improved grips, which is great. The motor is the same. The battery packs have been upgraded. Now, the interesting thing about this is they keep their two options. So their lower battery pack capacity has gone up by about 0.5 kilowatt-hour, and so has the high spec one. And then they still have this power pack option, which is like this little 2 to 3 kilowatt-hour battery pack that you can just plop in for longer distance trips. If you have the high-end battery pack and the power pack, you have about 15 kilowatt hours worth of energy on a motorbike, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking
Wow.
about a city range of 185 miles, or about just under 100 miles at 70 miles an hour. Now, the challenge with this, guys, is its price. You're looking at over $17,000, Seth, for a motorbike. That's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not allowed to ride motorcycles until my kids are in college, so I'm not a close watcher of the motorcycle scene. What I do like about the external battery pack is, if Zero does get a critical mass, they can set up, the equivalent of Tesla's battery swap thing, and you could drive cross country and just, every 50 or 80 miles, just plop in a new battery pack.
It would be
Um,
very cool.
So that's kind of cool. Where my interests lie are in the lower price bracket, because I mean, so this is kind of like the Tesla of motorcycles, where
Yeah.
it's I I'm more interested in what, because it's kind of crazy what you can do with such little like a 10 kilowatt battery pack will shoot a regular bike, hundreds of getting the weight down. I like what they've done with Zero's kind of incremental improvement, but until it gets down until motorcycle-ish prices,
Yeah.
which is under $10,000, it's not really going to make it's not going to gain a critical mass.
And I would like to see more people doing the Streamliner thing, the feet first motorcycle. And I've forgotten his name. He rides a Zero and he's modified it. Tom, he's in Plug-in America, I'm sure. And I've just forgotten his name. He's just ridden across the country. And he's got a very, very highly modified motorbike. And I can't think of his name. Goodness.
Oh, yeah, I don't know who that is.
I'm just trying to think of his name. Anyway, I would love to see more streamlined bikes because bikes are really aerodynamically inefficient. So, interestingly, Seth, just to clarify on the battery pack, the main battery pack is not swappable. It's only this little tiny 2 kilowatt-hour battery pack. But
Right.
I guess it does hold up some future some sort of possibilities there. All right, let's talk about plug-in vehicle sales for the month of September. They are finally in. Leaf is up. All these other cars are up. One site this week claimed that Tesla had its best sales figures ever. The clarification there is that they think, I mean, it's one of those headline baiting things. It's had the best September ever. And then you look at the article and they say, based on our own calculations, Tesla doesn't give its sales figures out. So that's a tough one to predict, isn't it, Seth?
Yeah, I don't. They're probably just throwing darts at a wall.
Yeah, they are throwing.
So, I mean, Tesla is ramping up production. They haven't, like, if you go online to Tesla, you can't buy a car soon. I think they're actually into January in the US.
Wow.
So it's like, they're making as many as they possibly can, and all of those are sold. So we have to assume that they're making more than they made the previous months because of efficiencies and they're opening up new markets.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, using common sense, yeah, they're probably making more than they've ever made before. And you know what? They'll probably announce something at the event or during the next earnings call. But
Yeah.
like to say that you've guessed that they've done it based on your own guesses, that's not really helpful.
We also had some people going, the Volt's down a long way, and the Prius is down a long way, and then we just want to clarify here. Obviously, the Volt 26 out at Detroit at the North American International Auto Show in January. No one in their right mind is going to buy a first generation Volt if they know the second generation's coming, and some of the promises that GM is putting up for the second gen Volt are just too good for anybody to want to buy a current generation car. And Chevy, GM has been really kind of aggressive. They ran a press release this week. We didn't pick it up because it was just non-news about the camouflage on the new Volt and how they were camouflaging the car, and it was just a pointless piece of news. So my point is that both the Volt and the Prius are due a refresh. I don't think people are going to buy those cars if they know a refresh is coming. The other thing is the plug-in Prius hybrid. They just can't make enough of them, Seth, which is interesting because of its range.
I find it very interesting. I have one, and I got not the first year, but the second year. And, obviously my other car's a Tesla, so I'm a little spoiled, but it's very frustrating because you can't just drive electric. The gas engine kicks in all the time for no reason. Like I'll be going down a hill on a warm day with nothing on and a full battery pack, and the engine will kick on.
I'm going to turn on now.
Right. And, we were thinking like, oh, there's 10 miles. We'll do a little bit around town and we'll hardly ever use any gas. But, it doesn't turn out that way. You do save some money. I think about maybe about a quarter of our miles on the Prius have been electric, but there's no way you can control it, which is unfortunate because I know the European version, because there's some cities where you can go in a city with EV only mode, you can push a button and the gas engine won't turn on. I would really like to see one of those.
And I know that even then you can just push the car a bit too hard and it comes on. Tom, I know that the plug-in Prius is the bane of a lot of EV advocates in California because people actually buy them to get the perk of going in the HOV line, don't they? Even if they don't plug them in.
Yeah, and it's crazy that a car that can't drive on electricity at highway speeds gets a free pass in the carpool lane. That just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Well, you can go 65, I think, is the cutoff, right?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's better than
I mean, that's, but still, like
you can go your 6 or 10 miles, and then
and then it
Yeah.
turns off. While I remember, it was Terry Hirschner who drove across America in the modified Zero S. Thank you to the chat room for letting me know that. I couldn't remember his name, and I knew someone would figure it out. All right, final story of the segment. Little boy versus Nissan LEAF locking cable. Now, you guys have in America, and a lot of people, I've spoken to some Americans this week going, what's the big deal? In America, most public charging stations have a tethered cable. That means that the cable is connected to the charging station. You pull up, you open your charge port door, and you plug in the little thing into the socket, and it all works fine. In Europe, all of the charging stations, unless they're high-powered ones, you have to get your own cable out of the trunk and put it in one end and one in the other. Yes, okay, arguably they do lock in, but also if you're using the portable EVSE, electric vehicle supply equipment, those are little tiny bricks that you get when you buy a plug-in car normally. It's kind of supposed to be sometimes called the emergency charge cable. You plug one end into an outlet, you plug one end into your car, and it charges, but it charges really slowly. Now, the Nissan LEAF, the 2013 and newer Nissan LEAFs came with this locking mechanism that slid this little plastic tang over the top of the charge port door after you'd plugged your charge lead in. And the idea was that this little plastic tang stops you from depressing the lever that disconnects the charge cable. But there was a guy in Quebec who discovered, after his charge cable was stolen at work one day, that it's very easy to open this, and he got his son to do it for him. I've got a video here. I'm going to talk you through this video. So this is this guy's Nissan LEAF. He shows you he's plugging the cable in, and if you watch about now, the little white plastic tang goes in, and he's showing, yes, you can't pull it out. And then he gets his son, who's 6, with a cable, a comb, a hair comb, the end of a hair comb. And it takes this guy's kid 6 seconds to move the locking tab back with the comb and unplug the charge port cable. That's scary, Tom.
I guess a little. I was at DEF CON the year they had an 8-year-old girl show you how you can use the bump trick to pick a lock in 2 seconds. So yeah, I'm not fine. I don't trust locks. And on the other hand, if somebody really wants to steal that charge cord, I'd rather they just steal the charge cord and not damage, do a couple of $1,000s worth of damage to the charge port on my car.
That's very true. Seth, you were going to say something.
No, it just reminds me, I don't know if you've heard of the U-lock
Yeah.
thing that you can open with a big pen.
Yeah.
You take the top of a big pen and you just turn it, and it totally renders the whole thing useless. So I agree with Tom. It's much better for the cable to get taken than the front end of the car to get ripped out.
Or for the cable to be cut while there's still power, and then you've damaged the car and you've damaged the charging station, and no one can use either. It reminds me of a D-lock that I had on my bike. I used to have when I was a student in London. Before I was much slimmer at one time when I used to cycle 50 miles a day, and I bought this second-hand, hand-built 1980s touring bike, and I used to go everywhere on it. I mean, it was just brilliant. And I came home one reading week. We used to call them reading weeks, which is kind of like your spring break, but not quite. Came home to see my parents, took the bike with me. Being a music student, decided I was going to do some busking on the local streets, and took my instruments and locked my bike up. And some criminals came on with a can of compressed air. And they directed at the lock. They freeze the lock to make the metal rigid. It's brittle, and then they whack it with a hammer, and there goes your bike. So you're right. I mean, as my dad used to say, if someone wants it really badly, they can have it. I'd rather they just took it than hurt me or anything else that I care about in the process. We're going to have another ad break now. If you want to support Transport Evolved, and the previous ways I told you were not impressive, there is a way that you can get swag. Transport Evolved swag. With a little logo on like this, the Transport Evolved logo. Not one of these, You have to be a member of Transport Evolved staff to have one of these. But they are available on sweaters, on varsity shirts, on cups. I think we've got some baby stuff with the Transport Evolved logo on. And we've had lots of people sending us photographs of them wearing Transport Evolved branded stuff over the summer at events. And that was really nice. So if you want to share the love about Transport Evolved, go online to www.transportevolved.com, click on the shop link, and there's loads of swag there. You can buy your own Transport Evolved branded stuff. And then when you see someone and they go, why are you wearing a shirt that says Transport Evolved? Then you can tell them about the show and send them here. And we do have loads of new people that have found us because of seeing other people wearing those shirts. So it works. Advertising. And of course, you buy those shirts and we get a little something in return. And thank you for your kind support if you do buy goodies at the shop. Right, so we're into the final segment now. And this is one... this is a story that's been very convoluted this week. It's about a guy who bought a Tesla Model S. He bought a Tesla Model S for $50,000. That's a bargain, especially considering he bought a signature P85 Tesla Model S for $50,000. How did he buy a P85 signature series for $50,000, I hear you ask? He bought it at a salvage auction. This is a car that had been involved in an accident, a road traffic accident, and it had been deemed as an insurance write-off by the insurance company, and that meant that it was uneconomical to repair the car, and therefore the person obviously was given a payout. The insurance company bought the car, and then what insurance companies do with those salvage vehicles is they then auction them off, either for scrap or for parts. And this guy turned up, bid $50,000 for the car. He bought it. He then took it to his local garage and used genuine Tesla parts to repair the car. But then, the car is now fixed. But he says it doesn't work, and he needs Tesla to switch it on, switch the brain on. I don't quite understand quite what that means, because I don't know if it's just activate it on the Tesla server so that Tesla can talk to the car, whether it means, press a button so it can charge again, or bypass some kind of safety lock that engaged when the car was originally involved in an accident. But he said he needs Tesla to do that, to reactivate the car. Tesla's turned around and said, there is a disclaimer form that we need you to sign. And that disclaimer form says that you are going to give us the car, we are going to examine it, we're going to decide if that car is roadworthy, and if we decide it isn't, we get to keep the car. Now, is that what you understood from this story, Tom? Oh, he's gone again. What did you think of the story, Seth?
Oh, sorry, I'm back.
Oh, he's back. I thought he'd go on, Tom.
Yeah, so, that's what the guy claimed, but then Tesla's statement said that there was no we can repossess the car clause in that agreement. So I'd like to get to the bottom of that.
Yeah, and then there was the question about this guy saying that Tesla has blacklisted him, Seth. He couldn't buy parts or whatever.
I don't know. It's sounding a little bit like he's trying to be a troublemaker.
Well, frankly, it's a bit like me buying a wrecked Apple product on eBay, with a broken screen or whatever, taking it back to Apple and then trying to get Apple to treat this as a brand new phone that I've looked after all my life, etc., etc. Please put a new screen on it or whatever. I can see both sides of the argument, because one side of the argument is this is a car that's been involved in a really nasty accident. The insurance company decided this car was uneconomical to repair, and it was, or perhaps it was just too wrecked to be safe on the road. And Tesla said, look, we've got this priority for safety. We don't want cars on the road that aren't safe. We've said to this guy, we will look at this car and we'll decide whether it's safe or not. And he then declined. He doesn't want to sign this form. He just wants Tesla to fix his car and let him drive it. Now, I can understand that Tesla wants to protect the safety of its customers. I can understand that Tesla also wants to protect its brand, and he wants to ensure that people are driving Teslas are driving safe Teslas. But on the other hand, there is I want to be able to fix, tinker, play with my own car. And every other car on the market, you can pretty much do that with, right, Tom? Or can you?
I'm not aware of any other automaker that disables their cars.
Right. But I will say that Nissan in the UK certainly has told me, I was involved in an accident in my Nissan LEAF, and they told me that I had to take it back to a Nissan dealer in order to have my warranty honoured. Because there are certain things you have to do to the battery pack. You have to treat them in a certain way. You know, things like putting your car in a paint booth can damage your battery pack if it's not treated properly. And so they said, basically, you have to have the repair in our garage. And there's nobody else in the UK at the moment who's got the necessary, who's undergone the correct training, Nissan themselves, in order to be able to work on those cars. And I know for a fact that the same is true of Priuses. You know, any hybrid car, in fact, if there's anything that's slightly out of the ordinary, most garages won't touch it. What about on the East Coast, Seth?
In the US, I can't think of an automaker that would what he says car if it's not up to spec. But you know, coming at it from Tesla's angle, like, you know, what if there's some damage to the battery or to the frame or something that makes it dangerous, and you know, he's driving down the road and it cracks a little bit more and the batteries catch on fire or something like that. I mean, Tesla's kind of in a weird situation with its high profile. So, you know, I can see their point of view saying, well, hey, there's significant damage to this car. We don't want you to drive it. But, you know, and then on the other hand, they can't go and just buy every car that's been wrecked. So, you know, I guess that's a smart way of saying, well,
right,
you know, like, we're going to give you the car back that you purchased for $50,000, which is frankly a lot of money for a car that you don't know if you're going to ever be able to drive, and we're not going to turn it on because that's a dangerous car, or, you know, it's got manufacturing issues that can't be, you know, just replaced easily. I mean, you know, who knows what? I don't know the situation of the car, but I can see Tesla's point of view on that. Like, they're kind of in a bad spot because, I mean, this guy sounds kind of like, you know, he doesn't really care too much about safety of the car or the you know, Tesla's opinion about it. So, you know.
Well, at least he's not in Slovakia, as our friend Gavin Shoebridge will tell us, because in Slovakia, if there is a car that you want to convert to electricity or do anything on, you have to get the manufacturer's approval for the conversion. So you have to write to the manufacturer and go, I'm going to turn your petrol car into an electric car. And they have to say, yes, you can do it before you can do it. Tom, I know that you're friends with Otmar Eisenbach, who is doing the Stretchler, which, you know, follows this similar kind of story. It's a Volkswagen Vanagon, stretched Vanagon that's, you know, he's owned for years. He's bought a salvage Model S, hasn't he? And he's got it working.
Indeed.
And I remember that he had trouble getting parts for it.
Yeah. They told him they would not sell him parts. And this is just mechanical parts,
right?
Like, you know, steering parts and things like that.
So
that seems unreasonable to me.
So there is some, I mean, based on that plus this story does make me think there is something going on. I just don't think we're getting the full story. I think we need to kind of try and figure out what that is before we go any further. All right, so let's move on to our next story, and this is a battery story. Now, Seth, Tom, we've always been told that rapid charging is bad for battery packs, right?
To varying degrees, yes.
Yeah, you charge your battery packs quickly. Eventually, your battery pack will degrade over time. Now, Tom, you obviously you deal with high capacity battery packs, high power battery packs in your world of robotic championships, don't you?
Yeah, the batteries there. I mean, I've just worked with marine lead acid batteries.
Oh, right, okay. Cool. I wasn't sure because sometimes you see these big, really powerful high discharge battery packs, especially designed, etc. But right. There's a study this week that's come out that rapid charging your battery pack does very little damage to your car's battery pack or any battery pack, and it's more to do with the molecular level the way that ions enter and exit the cathode on the battery. Now, without getting too technical, this is from Stanford University, and they've said they think actually the best practice is to rapidly discharge the battery pack, because if you rapidly discharge a battery pack, it drains more evenly than if you drain it slowly, which is interesting. Tom, can you talk us through that?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm a little confused on the details. They say they did the coin cell battery pack.
Yeah,
I don't know what.
which is like a button cell,
Yeah,
so it's
so
very small.
does that have any relevance to the sorts of batteries that are in electric vehicles?
Well, I think they've obviously they're scaling it up and moving it forward, but that's a good question.
And they've
And
looked at things under the microscope and they say it looks promising, but
it's still not,
okay, have they
yeah.
proven that it actually increases the loss curve versus pack cycles?
I think it's one of those ones where they've gone, hey, we've got a potential breakthrough, but we need to do more research.
Yeah, and I'm a show me the money kind of guy.
And you are
So
you're a battery expert, so if you're not convinced, then we need to take a cue from you, really.
okay, sure. Let's go
Seth,
with
what do you
that.
make of it?
I'm in agreement. It every single day or week, there's a new battery technology out that's going to change the world. And, you know, I, it's just like I've seen so many that haven't done anything that I'm kind of like immune to all this new, the next big thing is going to be blank. And, you know, Tesla seems like a smart group of people. And, if they're putting lithium ion current technology out into 2020, then
Yeah.
there's probably nothing in the lab. I mean, in the lab, sure, you can do things, but there's probably nothing scalable that is going to make a lot more sense than lithium ion typical stuff for the next few years.
And of course, we have to look to Tesla and the Gigafactory to see what's coming there, because Tesla's doing its R&D as well as production, so it's going to be interesting. Um, Talking of Tesla, we've kind of talked a lot about Tesla today, but Tesla's in the news a lot, and this is our final story. Tesla Motors has managed to unveil a new European charger, Supercharger, every single day last week. Every day there was a new Supercharger going online. Personally, I have seen two, I think maybe even three Superchargers in the UK going online, which is crazy. Crazy speed. Now, the amount of groundwork, the amount of investment, I don't know if anyone's actually figured out how much it costs to put one of these in the ground, but that's surely not sustainable, guys. I mean, how is Tesla doing this, Tom? How is it possible?
Well, they've got a lot of money that they made from their stock offering, so you've got that going, and they spend $0 on advertisement. So I think they view the superchargers as an advertisement expense.
Yeah, maybe,
So
maybe.
that may be how the bookkeeping works, and it's a pretty amazing story, which I think is not told very well. Chad Schwitter's just finished a month-long trip from Seattle. They did 11,000 miles. They made it to the East Coast, and I think with the exception of one stretch in Montana, it was all on superchargers.
That is
And they
insane.
ran into so many people that knew about Tesla's cars, but had no idea that the supercharger network exists,
Huh.
and that makes, long distance road trips no longer an issue. It's just, I mean, it's nicer than a gas car. You wait a little
Wow.
longer, but the fuel's free. It's amazing.
Well, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, Seth, I don't know if you've had that experience.
Yeah, I've driven to Minneapolis with my family and using the superchargers, and it's fantastic. With youngsters, our brakes, our gas brakes or petrol brakes, are usually longer than before we had kids. So the 20 minutes or so that we spend at a supercharger is usually more than enough to fill up our
Huh.
our battery packs. So like they're great. I think they're amazing. As far as the cost, um, Tesla does have to spend some money on leasing the property, but I I talked to a property owner who was ecstatic about the situation because they were getting, all these, this captive audience who, generally Tesla owners seem to have a little bit more money probably than
Yeah,
the average
yeah.
person. So you have this affluent captive audience that has 30 minutes to sit, and do whatever. So I don't think Tesla's going to have a hard time finding places to put these things. Also, they have this new like two supercharger that can fit on a pallet thing that they've started to come out. So, that might make even the map that they have out now seem kind of small if they can put that together. I mean, you can't just put those things anywhere. I think they're 480 volts, and you need a pretty big. Uh, well, you would either need a big battery or a big inducer or whatever to bring the power up that high. I think most lines carry 240. So, there's a lot involved, but I mean, for Tesla, the idea they're thinking long term, maybe the Model 3 doesn't have free supercharging. They've never said that the Model 3 is going to have free supercharging, and that's a way to bring the price down of the Model 3. So, maybe, Tesla ties your credit card to your car, and when you fill up at one of these millions of supercharger stations, you get charged $5 or $10 or whatever.
It's going to be interesting to see where it moves forward, though, isn't it? I mean,
with the supercharger network, it totally changes your situation. We use it all the time now. Whenever we went to Boston a couple of weeks ago, and we were down in New Jersey shore a couple of weeks ago as well, and both times supercharger made it possible. So it changes the car, changes the situation.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in Europe. I know that in Europe, a lot of the superchargers, they're focusing on cities, certainly in the UK, rather than on the freeway, which I find maddening. But it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. And I just think, and also interesting to note that you say that the Model 3 hasn't got free supercharging.
Nobody has said it will have that.
No, which contradicts some of the reports I've heard. But I'm not surprised. See, that's a lot of electricity to give away for free. That is it for today's show. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Thank you, Seth. Where can people find out more about you?
I'm on Twitter, llsethj, and electrek.co.
And thank you so much for giving up your Sunday afternoon to join us. And obviously also on the 9 to 5 Mac website.
9 to 5 Mac.
Good stories coming up and good stuff coming up. Be interesting to see what's going on in the world with the Apple Watch. I'll be watching. You're on my reading list because you're keeping me up to date with what's going on. The other thing that I find very, very interesting is kind of the lead up towards the Apple Watch. I've got a Pebble, and I've got to the point now where I think I've convinced myself today that I don't necessarily want an Apple Watch, because one of the things that worries me is about its stealability. People look at my Pebble and they just see a watch. I've just got this feeling that there's going to be a spate of stolen Apple Watches unless Apple figures out the security for it, which is interesting. Thank you very much for joining us. Tom, where can people find out about you?
Yeah, I'm Tom Saxton on Twitter and Tom Sax on Facebook.
And are you still accepting people for battery things, battery studies?
Absolutely, yeah. If you go to pluginamerica.org and then go to the bottom of the page, there's a link there for battery studies.
And this is essentially a crowdsourced reliability study, isn't it? A bit like you get with Consumer Reports for the batteries.
Exactly. So yeah, whether you're having a good experience or a bad experience or an average experience, I'd love to hear about how many miles you've driven and what your battery capacity is in a Leaf, a Roadster, or a Model S. And
I still owe you a thing. I keep going and half filling it out, and we've got problems with our power here, and the power keeps going out. And every time I go to so I will do it. I promise.
Excellent.
Thank you for everyone for joining us today. If you want to keep track of us and follow us, you can do so by going to Twitter, and we are Transport Evolve. No D, because Transport Evolved is one character too long, and Twitter I don't understand why they do You can also find us on YouTube. We are Transport Evolved on YouTube. And of course, you can find us Monday through to Sunday at www.transportevolved.com. We've got some new writers coming online this week. We've got the fantastic guest blogger every week, Electra Girl. She blogs over at transportevolved.com, and she's got a fan club. She's got our own fan club, which I think I'm very jealous of. It's brilliant. And we've also got the ongoing saga of the fantastic Pure, aka Elliot, who is one of our columnists. She's a nurse by day. She wants to convert her Morris Minor to electric, but she also drives a Mitsubishi i-MiEV, and she's currently looking for a decent quality Toyota Prius, and it's proving harder than you might think in the ultra cheap used car market, and she keeps us up to date with all of those. Personally, you can find me at aminorjourney.com or about.me/aminorjourney. My name is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield. Thanks for joining us, folks. And as always, don't forget to plug in. See you soon. Take care. Bye.